It's wonderful to be back with Thomas Ramstad again, all the way from Norway. Thank you so much for joining me, Thomas. Thomas, would you mind just sharing with the viewers a little bit about yourself? What is your background in your career? Tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, I can do that. Hi, Joke. I'm actually a software engineer. I got a master's in software engineering. I've studied in Norway and 3 years in England, at University of Bristol. And when I'm asked this question, I usually present it as a sort of my professional career is based on and 10 years of software engineering, working as a developer for ABB and Microsoft. After that, I started working for various companies, but working with customers, doing solution selling and architecture and presenting customers to great software solutions, solving their problems. And I found that very enjoying. And then I actually moved on to leadership and worked for like 10 years for consulting companies, software engineers still, but now my main focus was coaching and mentoring both our consultants and our clients. When it comes to leadership, I'm a sort of servant leader, but at the same time, I like to be clear and I like to expect things from people. I like to help people grow. And we have talked a lot about that, you and me, okay? I also like to bring value to the people I work with, but also my clients. That is very important to me.
And that's why you're such a good fit for this topic specifically. So for today, from a leadership perspective, really getting into that avenue of yours, I wanted to chat to you today about micromanagement. Have you ever experienced micromanagement? Have you ever seen the micromanagement? What is your definition of a
Yes,
micromanager?
I haven't actually experienced micromanagement, thankfully,
You're
but
lucky.
I have no. I've seen it, and well, we could start with sort of my definition and where I think it comes from, and then I can give you some examples. We can go a few steps further back, and I'll give you some life philosophy because then you know a bit more about me, and
Cool.
it has to be about bringing up children. I have a girl who is 15 and I have a son who is 16. It's a very difficult period because now they are sort of trying to find themselves and distancing them from their parents, which is normal. My mission as a parent, my beacon, is that my primary objective is to actually prepare my children for the pivotal point where we are not there anymore. I'm not talking about death. I'm talking about when they're like 18, 19, 20, I don't know, but around there, where we are not there on a daily basis anymore. They can call us, of course, but now they are on their own. And my job when they are small till they're leaving is to actually prepare them. And then you have to be prepared to actually watch them fall, fail, actually to make fool of themselves. And on that journey, they learn. And you actually have to push them a bit and you actually have to take a step backward to actually see them fall and hurt themselves. But that's part of life. And if you don't do that, they don't evolve, they don't develop, and they're not prepared for the time where we are not there anymore. And that's a journey. It's like a staircase. It's not like a huge leap where you just go from 0 to 100. Just small steps and it goes ups and down. It's like a roller coaster. And when we bring that to micromanagement, I think that a lot of people that actually micromanages, it's a lack of trust. You don't allow people to actually fail. You don't believe that they actually can deliver or learn or develop. Other thing is that's very easy as a parent because I'm 55 and my son is 16. Of course, I have experienced tons of happy moments and tons of shit. So I know a lot of things, but it's his life. And it's not my job to tell him how to do things unless he's about to die or hurt himself hugely. But it is my job to mentor him and to coach him and make him think, make him reflect. And a leader, you have to have that ability and empower your people to actually fail and do their things their own way within a framework, a frame sort of environment. And you have specifically put up the outcomes and you agreed on the outcomes and you agreed on the framework. But then it's just like, okay, now you go and fix this or solve this or come up with some great idea. And then you can agree on the way, let's say in 2 weeks' time, we sit down and have a chat and see how it goes. And I think that's a very approachable and good thing to do.
Wow,
So
so
yeah,
I want to make a few comments. So
yes,
what it sounds like is that from the parent framework, you actually allow your kids to learn to think for themselves. And that's where if you're micromanaging, you're actually spoon feeding and you're not trusting that the person actually has the ability. So it sounds like you actually have a positive mindset that they can be and that they will probably fall, but like you said, they won't die. Like so there's this lady from South Africa, and I think we've spoken about it in the past,
yeah,
Dr. Caroline Dweck. She came up with the model of a growth mindset. And what you are
yes,
describing is when we're open to make mistakes, when we're open to learning, when we're open to growing. So you have the growth mindset, applying it on your kids, but they also need to have it themselves and the employees. And through that process, they actually learn to do things themselves, to take risks, to see that it's okay to make mistakes. So what I'm
yes,
seeing is that you've created a safe environment to try things out.
great,
That you are going to be there to help them pick up the pieces
yeah,
if need be, but you're trusting them so that when they get to that age, they'll be able to like be fine. So you're actually
yeah,
creating that independence long before you reach that time. And that's why you get so many in the parenting scenario. There's so many parents that get this wrong, where their kids just never move out.
yeah,
So they're like 40, they own properties somewhere else that they're renting out, but they never leave the parents.
yeah,
And I know people like this. And then their parents are still doing their washing, cooking. They never get that independence. And in the same way, if you apply it from a staffing point of view,
yeah,
you want to be able to get them when you're not there, they can still operate. I
yeah,
love that.
totally. When you actually allow people to fail, make errors, we can sort of switch the coin and say not fail and make errors, but it's actually learning. That's the point. And you have to build that environment and you have to make them feel safe and you have to encourage them to actually try out new methods or frameworks or solutions. And in the world today, we need new innovations. We need people to be innovative. And if we encourage people to trial and error, and we tell them that's okay, that's fine, we learn something. But if you talk about the now we have spent money or you spoiled milk or whatever, yeah, you don't make people feel safe. And if you also you talked about doing the dishes or washing your
Oh
laundry,
my word.
and you tell people, yeah, you can't do this, you can't do that. I like to do it this way, and that's micromanagement.
I was saying last night in this webinar, you're actually enabling the negative behavior because you are rescuing the other party and doing their work, what they're supposed to be doing on their behalf.
Mhm,
And you have
mhm.
that belief, like you were saying, that only you can do it. And you're
Yeah,
actually condescending. You're looking down at them and thinking they can't be taught. I'm the only person that can do this work. And if I'm
yeah,
not going to control them, and if I'm not juggling all the balls, then
yeah,
some ball is going to fall on the ground. Perhaps you should pass some of the balls to other
yeah,
people and it will be more
yeah.
manageable.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
okay, what do you think that leads to when it comes to
burnout for the manager? The negative impact is burnout, which can have an impact on their mental health, their physical health. They could end up in hospital. And then if they're not there and now the team is used to them doing the carrot and stick approach where they're running at them with a stick and saying, you need to do it in this way and you need to report back in this way and I need to know every minute. Now they checked out. They're on the operating table or they're in a hospital or in a sleeping clinic or something. Suddenly that company is going to come crumbling down because no one has actually learned to think for themselves, to be innovative. So I've seen it can have a very bad knock-on effect for everyone. And what ends up happening for the manager is they can never leave their position. So that's where very often those managers will stay in that role for like 35 years or whatever, and they never grow. So you should always be looking at who should be my next successor. How can I set my team up for success so that when I leave, they can continue without me, or when I go away on holiday, they can continue without me, so that you can actually move on to your next goal, your next role, or your next company. You don't always want to stay stagnant. It also doesn't opportunities for the rest of the team to grow. So I worked in environments like that where a lot of people could very quickly see this is the type of environment I don't want. And they didn't need the stability of that salary. That was the very much cutthroat advertising space I was in. And they would, within a week or two or within a month, resign. And they'll believe that they'll find something else because they were like, I'm not going to submit to the tyranny of this leader that's causing me psychological damage. But what it also created in that environment was a fear-based culture where people were so fearful. So sometimes a micromanager can like scrutinize people's calendars. So you were in the solution selling space at a time. I was in an environment where the manager would check your diaries, and on a Friday you needed to have a certain amount of appointments. And if you didn't have, then you were forced to do boiler room until you had the appointments. But sometimes it's not possible to find people, or they're busy, or they're tied up. You can't force people into appointments as well into your diary. And then they were micromanaging it. So they would literally try to catch you out. So they would phone people during the week to try to see if anyone didn't go to the appointments, if it was false appointments, and they would fire people on the spot. So it created this hectic, negative, fear-based culture where you're in sales, you're doing the best you can, you're driving long distances, you're doing preparation. Sometimes people are going to move an appointment, or they'll tell you that they're late. So now you are panicking about how much you update your diary, you're out of the office. So can you see that whole knock-on effect? And when you're in a state of fear and panic, how does that relate to the person you're selling to?
Exactly, and I like your example because your leader was focusing on activities instead of focusing on the outcome. I mean, you are sort of for your company. The company should focus on outcome as well instead of just activities per definition, because you want the outcome, and it might be that you do other things, for example, the expected activities that actually leads to the preferred outcome. That stresses you because if you focus on the outcome, you are empowered to do the things that you think is needed, and you can learn and you can make errors and you can explore, and it means it's sometimes that you actually find new ways to do things, and the outcome is extraordinary, which we have seen in many ways. So I think that's a great example.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think it's about allowing people to have the autonomy to try out different things, like you're saying, and then they could actually say to the manager, this is the approach that I want to try out. And then you can measure the outcome and say, why don't we experiment for a week or two where you're trying out this approach? and we'll see what are the results if it actually changes. If it's not, go back to our system or do a dual system. So I think in that regard, it's actually allowing the person to think as well. Yeah. So what would be, Thomas, maybe some of the ways that people, instead of micromanaging, what would be a better way of leading that you've seen? So you spoke about coaching, mentoring. What else?
One of my objectives as a leader is to set expectations. The other thing is you were actually touching on that point earlier in Yoke, and that is actually to make myself obsolete. Because again, back to the children and upbringing. So we bring that into the corporate world and to actually make myself obsolete. And that means you mentioned holidays, okay? You shouldn't be afraid as a leader to go on holiday.
Yeah, I agree.
Then you're doing something wrong, okay? You shouldn't be afraid of not being there. You shouldn't be afraid of not being notified, not getting emails or phone calls, because you're not getting a phone call and you're not being notified, then things are going well. And then you can sort of, because then you have built a team that is working, you have empowered people to grow, develop, and learn. And now they're doing things, they know what to do, they have their mission, they have their vision, and they have their beacon. And now they're just doing things they love to do, and they feel empowered, and they are thriving. I think that's great.
So what it sounds like with the mission, the vision, they're actually doing the work, you're not necessarily getting notified, all of that. It sounds like you need to create the type of culture where people get their stuff done, where they know this is how we behave. These are almost like the unwritten rules of work. Get on with things. This is where we're going, but this is how we do things, how we make people feel. So is culture part of your leadership style, Thomas? And like, is there any practical examples that you could give on how to create a culture that you want?
Yes, certainly. Culture is very, and for me, it's culture is actually your values, your personal values and your company's values sprung into action. I think it's, for example, let's say trust is very important, and you have to build trust and you have to earn trust. And to do that, you actually have to care. You have to care about your employees and the people you work with. And there is always a discussion, should you keep your private life private and corporate life corporate? And there is a sort of a barrier between them. I don't think so. You can always bring some of your personal life to work, because we talked about earlier many times that there are things in people's life, private events and terrible things, small things and big things that are happening. And that sometimes may block them from working properly, being present. And they have to feel safe, and you have to have earned that trust that they actually call you and tell you why they can't come to work, because they have to fix an accident, something happened in the family, water in the basement, or whatever. And when they call you, they tell you, yeah, I have a problem and I can't come to work, I have to fix this. Then you've earned the trust that they actually tell you they are vulnerable, and they tell you that they have this problem and they have to fix it first. And it's a good thing to actually let them go, because they can't do their work anyway. The other thing is that when you build culture where you actually care, not just say that you care, is to call them up and see how things are going and ask them, how can I contribute? Is there anything I can do? Sort of be informed and keep them informed. And I think that comes a long way.
Sure. I love what you're saying. And I want to share an example as well, actually really caring for people. And Patrick Lencioni calls it vulnerability-based trust, is where I love what you were saying. where you need to also bring something of who you are to the office. You're not just a robot. In the same way she was sharing about the way that you were teaching your kids and you're bringing your kids up, that has actually had a huge impact on your leadership style. And in that same
Yes.
way, those lessons could actually help other people as well. So something that happened about the safety aspect is in that same toxic environment, there was another manager who I had very good relations with. So where the one was complete micromanager, the other one was the opposite. He was outcome-based focus, but he created that safe environment where he knew what was the minimum we needed to do so that the other person wouldn't fire us. But then we had the autonomy within a framework where he would protect us while we were making the magic happen, right?
Yes, exactly.
And what happened was I felt safe enough with him that when my father was very ill and my mom phoned us and said, come down to your hometown, I messaged him to say, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how long we're going to be, but I'm just letting this is a situation. And then my dad very suddenly died. And it was a huge shock. He actually died on the operating table. It's like you don't always expect things to happen at a specific time. When we saw his body, I took out my phone and messaged my boss. He's just passed away. I didn't feel comfortable to phone because you're in shock and all of that. But I felt comfortable enough to just let him know so that he knows he needs to leave me alone and sort out the admin. And he then responded and said, take a minimum of a week leave. We'll sort it out. But I mean, like, I don't want you to do anything to do with work. So you need to have that safe environment where you can also know when someone's feeling very vulnerable, they might not even want to pick up the phone. It's too hectic for them to also have that respect. And they still managed to find my home address and send this beautiful basket of flowers to my house, I think the next day in my hometown. So I felt exactly like you're saying, that care, that follow up, just that reaching out in a very gentle way. What I was saying to friends the other day is when someone feels vulnerable, you don't want them to do the ugly cry. So you want to empower them to be okay. While if you immediately hug a person and you almost make them feel like a victim or shameful or whatever, that's where they can almost immediately go into fight and flight mode. So as a leader, you want to be respectful. Should they want to go there, they can, but you need to almost like be kind but supportive and warm and not say shame, not use the words that could actually make the situation worse. So I really like that.
Yeah, it's a very, very good example, okay. And when we talk about culture and we talk about behavior, we also have to bring up the subject of values, because I think values are the foundation for your behavior. And as you said, your leader at that time is clearly that was part of his values, you know, to actually care and be there and just say, okay, this is the situation, take care of yourself and take care of your family and come back when you're ready. And that is values into action. And because you can talk about values, it's very easy to talk about values, to even put them on the wall. It's even easier to put them in PowerPoints, but it's very difficult to put them into life.
I've seen where I do a lot of leadership development work. We actually do a culture map, which actually gets the team to come up with their core values. But that's literally where you're actually looking at how do we put them in action and what would the outcomes, the blocks and the enablers look like. And ultimately, they then design a culture map, which they can then use as their code of conduct, but also for their leaders in performance meetings. Because what I say to them as a leader, if you and your team have come up with your core values, and maybe you need to do it every few years because they might change as well. Then you can use it when, for instance, let's say a person loses their temper over the phone of a client and you have a core value of excellence. You can use the excellence value of saying when you were going into fight and flight mode and yelling at the customer, that did not reflect excellence and the way we want people to feel when they're dealing with us. In the future, when you feel, I want to send you on a course for conflict resolution, anger management, so that you can find the tools to be able to calm yourself down in that situation. So now you're actually taking their values and you're using that as a performance discussion, because often what happens is people will just be outcome based. So we'll say, oh, we're making the targets, but they're not looking at the culture in terms of how is the work that you do impacting the rest of the team and the customers. You might be reaching the targets, but are you doing it in the way that's making people want to work at this company or not? Or are you actually walking over people, damaging relationships? People are resigning because of you. That's not a good thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's, again, a good example. And I think that it's very, very good to, as you said, do a culture analysis, because not only do you have to work well as a team now, but change is coming. We will change all the time. The company will change. It needs to do something differently. And then you have to have the team with a good culture, and you have to agree upon the culture, and you have to measure it, because people's values are different. And you can pinpoint more easily if you have measured it what you want to work on, as you told us. And it's, if you want to, for example, move into a different market, you want to sell a different product, or you have to make some changes. Culture is a vital part of that change as well. And if you have a group of people that are not willing to change, they are seeking comfort and the safe zone, and I'm feeling happy here, 50, fat and happy. No, if you do a cultural analysis and you see that, well, we're not very eager to change, then you can work on it, and that's a good thing. And you can talk about it, and then people might talk about their fears of why they don't want to change, and you can actually make people change as long as they feel safe about their fears. And you can just conclude that, okay, that's not a problem. And then you might have, it's change management as well, and people don't do that. So that's why a lot of changes fail.
I was chatting to a potential client the other day talking about change management and the psychology of change. And I said very often, so you were referring to that where a person, you said 50 happy and 50 fat and happy. So it's kind of like a person's in a comfort zone. So they're in the present and they're in the positive present, and they think everything's great. We don't want anything to change. But what you could then show them is the negative present, make them aware of their BMI or what's going to happen if they don't change, or like what are all of the weaknesses and things that they are not aware of in their blind spots at the moment. And then you take them to the negative future in terms of what's going to happen in 12 months' time in the business if we haven't changed, and then to the positive future. What could that look like? And when people go through that psychology, if they're just in a happy space, they're not going to change. You actually have to take them emotionally to a place where they can realize what is the cost of not changing. And if you can put a process in place, and that's where you can actually convince people to take on a new service provider or make major changes in the business, you need to do that psychology of change with them. But like you said, you as the guide to show them this is safe. These are the reasons why we're doing it. It might feel like it's costly right now, but in the long run, it's going to be worth it. And if we're looking at right now, there's been so many changes. You and I were talking about the new electrical cars that's coming in Norway and how much it's actually putting stress on the grid, because all of these people now actually have to charge their vehicles. And it wasn't normal. The grid wasn't created for that. But now, if new solutions are not going to be put in place, what will happen in 12 months' time? So people might just keep on buying more and more and more electrical vehicles, but if there's not other forms of energy being created or systems in which people are charging their cars or rules in terms of only when this is in place are you allowed to buy another vehicle that's electrical, it's not going to actually work out. So
No,
yeah,
you have to talk about people's issues, their fears, and make it psychological safe.
yeah.
And then they are willing to change because and then we go back to the culture of trust as well, because people don't if people don't trust you, they won't tell you their issue, their fear, and you still go on with the change because it's, for example, important for the corporation or the team or whatever. But what will happen is that they will not tag along and join the happy clappers and join for the change train. They will undermine, not willingly or purposefully. They will just like be mines, so it will fail. And many times people don't realize why they fail changing. But you have to address people's issues and fears. Yeah.
So we have spoken about a lot today. We've spoken about a
Yes.
lot about psychological safety as one of your most
Yes.
important areas as a leader. We spoke about the importance of coaching and leading. We spoke about culture, like you said, actually really caring about your people
Mm.
and creating a culture where you bringing behaviors and values into action, and where you're using that as an accountability framework to actually coach your teams. I just want to add two more points and then we'll wrap up. I think you also addressed this, Thomas, when you were talking about culture. You also said it's important to communicate your vision and mission, and that's really aligned to purpose. So you were talking about yours as a leader, right? How important
Mm.
is it to align the individual and the company's purpose with each other?
I think it is really important, but at the corporate level, the outcome might be different. And I think I have worked in that way in many times because I might find my sort of own vision and mission within the corporate sort of framework or boundaries, because for me, it's really important that I have fun. It's interesting and
Hmm.
challenging. And so I think it's important for people to actually talk about, okay, I'm really eager to work on this.
Yes.
And the outcome will be aligned with the corporate's vision and mission. But it might be a bit on the side, probably, but I'll show you. And then you might get a month or two, and then the outcomes has actually seemed, yes, it's part of the corporate's vision and mission as well. I think it's really important for teams, squads, projects, or whatever to actually also be aligned, that you feel that you are also benefiting to to actually the outcomes of the corporation. Yes. So
I love that.
totally.
I love that. So actually, you were talking about your values also now, like you want it to be fun, engaging,
Yes.
interesting, and you're actually saying, can I work on this? So it's kind of like aligned to your passions and your strengths and the areas you want to work on. So when you allow your team to maybe choose projects or have
Yes.
that autonomy to be creative in it, they will actually
Yes.
be much more motivated as
Yeah, actually,
well.
empower people, empower teams, and it's the opposite of micromanagement. So it's better to have people that are sort of baking a lightning fire with a lot of enthusiasm and energy, running around and just like, yes,
Yeah.
rather than have people that feel that they're micromanagement, forced to do things. Of course, not everything you do during your professional career is fun,
No,
but
exactly.
sometimes you just have to do things. I hate Excel, by the way. So and spreadsheets. But yes, it is important that majority of the time you have fun, you feel challenged, and you benefiting, helping other people, helping the corporation you're
I
working for.
think I think this has been so helpful. Thank you so much for our chat today, and I'm looking forward to many more with you, and possibly
Yes,
we can delve a bit deeper into culture in a future one.
yes,
So
I love that.
thank
Yeah,
you so much, Thomas.
thank you.